Thank you all for joining. We're going to get started in just 1 second, okay? Good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Render, and I am the Director of Education for TREES Atlanta. We thank you so much for joining us this evening for our virtual speaker series. Tonight's topic is Atlanta's Secrets, Trails, and Trees. And for those of you who are new to TREES Atlanta, our mission is to protect and improve Atlanta's urban forest by planting and conservation efforts and also education efforts. Tonight, our speaker is Jonah McDonald. He is a naturalist at Mason Mill Park in DeKalb County, and he's also a storyteller and an author. And his latest book, Secret Atlanta, A Guide to Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure, is out now, and we will have a discount code for you later on in the presentation. So we want to welcome you. We want to make sure that this is a positive environment as much as possible. We do have a lot of people who are joining us tonight in the Zoom room, as well as either on Facebook or YouTube. If you have questions, please utilize the Q&A question bar at the very bottom of the Zoom window. You can submit your questions there. You can also submit them in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube. And if we run out of time, you are also welcome to submit your questions directly to Jonah at jonahpmcd@gmail.com. So we want to make sure we can serve you as best we can. There will be a feedback survey that we'd love for you to fill out for us. You can do that right after the webinar. If you're on Zoom, you'll be able to have that come up as a redirect once the webinar is complete. And if you are in any of our other social avenues, we'll have a link there for you. You'll also, if you pre-registered for the event, you will also be able to get that link in your email tomorrow. If you're interested in making any tree or shrub purchases, our tree sale is live right now. It's our 21st annual one, and we're taking pre-orders virtually. You can do that at treesatlanta.org/tree sale, and anything that you order now can be picked up on the 3rd of October. We will have a second chance sale, which will preview anything that we have left over, and that will be an in-person opportunity at the Carter Center on October 10th. If you're interested in coming to any of our other educational events, we do have several more that are coming up for the month of September. Next Saturday, we'll be doing an elderberry syrup workshop. We'll also have a speaker series on the 17th about environmental stewardship in youth, and we'll have a series about where to plant the right tree in the right space in your yard on the 24th of September. So check us out on social. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you want to get our newsletter or learn about any of our other events, you can join us at treesatlanta.org, and you can put your email in to get on our newsletter list, or you can just find out about other opportunities that we have going on. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Jonah.
Dana, y'all do such cool things. Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome.
I feel dwarfed by all the other programs that y'all are doing, but I'm really excited well, I can't see you, but I assume you can see me, to get to talk with you guys today about the thing I'm passionate about, our city, Atlanta. As Dana said, I've written 2 books, and so I'm going to share some things that have been in both of these books, and also probably a little beyond that too, because I love to talk about this stuff. So let me get started. I put together some slides, which I think just kind of illustrate my talk. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then you guys can see the stuff that that I'm going to talk about. So I moved to Atlanta on foot. In 2002, which now feels like such a long time ago, I walked the whole Appalachian Trail all the way from Maine down to Georgia to my new home here in Atlanta. And when I got here, I started telling people that, and they would say, "Oh, you're new to Atlanta. Have you heard about this place? It's called Kennesaw Mountain." And I would nod my head, because most of us who do any kind of hiking or outdoor stuff in Atlanta know Kennesaw Mountain. Or then they would say, oh, but there's this other place. It's called Stone Mountain. Yes, I know Stone Mountain. And then they would, of course, go on to the third, when you can guess what that was, Sweetwater Creek State Park. And those are what I consider kind of the big 3 of Atlanta hiking. And when I say Atlanta hiking, I'm talking about actually hiking here in Atlanta. And I started looking around and thinking, you know what? If I go out to Sweetwater, for instance, on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, I'm going to see 1,000 people walking down to the Manchester ruins, which is what you see in the picture here. There's got to be a better way. And I started looking around for the other green spaces that you could go on an honest to goodness hike. And lo and behold, I found over 90 places. They're all in the metro area, but we're a forest hike, a true hike. And I didn't find any book about that. So I decided, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do. My next task is going to be to write a book. And lo and behold, I became a published author about 6 years ago. And this book is still selling really well. And it's still kind of what I think is for those of us who like having a book in our hands when we're choosing a trail, it's still the one to go to when you're looking for places close to home. And so I've not just stopped there. I keep on finding new places, and I think, oh man, volume 2 of Hidden Forest maybe, because there are so many trails that have appeared on the scene, because there's been this movement in our city, spearheaded in many ways by Trees Atlanta, to not just have a tree canopy, but to celebrate a tree canopy. And we sometimes, those of us who are in the know, like those of you who are listening to me right now, that we like to call ourselves the city in the forest, right? Well, Trees Atlanta and nature people like me do. But think about, just as I was saying, there's a big 3 of hiking in Atlanta. What would you say the big 3 of Atlanta tourism would be? Well, here's my ideas. Coca-Cola. Yeah. Most people think Atlanta's all about. How about Dr. King, the Civil Rights Movement? Yeah. Perhaps the Centennial Olympic Games. Those would be the three I would consider to be the big three of Atlanta when people think about what Atlanta is. But just as I was looking for the off the beaten path stuff when I wrote Hidden Forest, I decided that I wanted to find the off the beaten path things about Atlanta that weren't necessarily nature. And that's how I got to write the book that just came out that's called Secret Atlanta. And I love the subtitle, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure. Because you can imagine when I went to a place and I would say, I'm writing a book called Secret Atlanta, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure. You can imagine each site, each person would say, well, am I obscure? Am I wonderful? Or am I weird? And so today I'm going to tell you some stories that come from Secret Atlanta and also come from Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest. But because this is Trees Atlanta, I got to start with trees. Trees. Does anybody know where this tree is? Well, if I was in person, y'all could shout out your answers. But those of you who are tree people, you look at it, you say, okay, there's some resurrection fern growing on it. That bark is kind of blocky. It looks like up on the limbs, it's kind of like plate-like and shaggy. Maybe, somebody said Herbert Taylor. This is at Big Trees Forest Preserve off Roswell Road, just north of Buckhead. And this is one of the really big old white oak trees that's growing there. And I just, it's a tree picture that makes me think, it's a wonderful tree. But first, I want to tell you about something that Trees Atlanta does that you may know about, which is called the Champion Tree Project. So I got inspired by trees like this one that you see right here. And I decided I wanted to put a champion tree on every single hike in Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest. A champion tree, what is that? Well, first of all, it's the largest tree of its species within the perimeter. So, so there is, let's see. So you have to do 3 measurements: how big around, how wide the crown spreads, and how tall it is. You add those measurements together and you get a score, and each tree has a champion score, and the one with the largest score wins. This one is not a champion white oak. Actually, there are bigger ones in the city, though this is a beautiful specimen. And I went to Eli Dickerson, who is a volunteer with Trees Atlanta, who kind of monitors the Champion Tree Project. And I said, Eli, I want a champion tree on every hike. And he laughed at me and said, Jonah, there's only one champion per species. You can't have one on every hike. So we came up with a term called sentinel trees, trees that have stood sentinel over our city for years and years and make our city what it is in many ways. And we started identifying trees like the one you see before you that may not be the champion, but it's a memorable tree. And I want to tell you one tree story before I go into some others. I was hiking at the Gold Branch unit of the Chattahoochee, and I came across this tree. And you see, it's a memorable tree. It's not the largest tree ever, but it's definitely super interesting in how it looked. And I definitely recorded, I said, oh, this is going to be a sentinel tree, a tree that make people stop and marvel when they walk past it. And when I got to the parking area, I was carrying 3 GPSs and an iPad and a phone in my hands. And there was a trail runner who said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm writing a hiking guidebook, so I'm taking data, and I'm including champion and sentinel trees. And he said, oh, like the duck tree. No, sorry, he said, like the moose tree. And I said, the moose tree? And I pulled out this picture, and I said, is this the tree you're talking about? He said, yeah, that's the one. My daughter calls it the moose tree. And I said, well, I think it looks like a duck. And he said, it's a moose. And so from there on out, I've called this tree the moose tree, and it's one of the sentinel trees featured in my book. Unfortunately, I didn't know what kind of tree it was, so I had to go back out and identify it. Turns out it's a mockernut hickory, but when I got there, this had happened. Do you see how the trunk has broken off there in the middle? I called up my publisher and said, stop the presses. The moose tree is broken. And my publisher said to me, Jonah, the moment a hiking guidebook goes goes on the shelves, it's already going to be out of date somewhat. I haven't been back to see the moose tree in a couple of years, but next time you're hiking at Gold Branch, check it out and tell me if it's fully fallen down now. It made me sad, but also reminded me of how nature is always changing, and how even though we gain these personal connections with the trees around us, um, they're not forever. Well, okay, so the moose tree and champion and sentinel trees. So when I was writing Secret Atlanta, you know I had to include some trees because you can tell I'm a bit of a tree nerd. Um, and so I, of course, went to the Champion. Do you know where that is? This is the largest living thing in Atlanta. It's also the city champion tree of all trees, of all species, the city champion. Those eyes, nose, and mouth aren't for real. Those are just decoration. This tree is at a nursing home called Our Lady of Perpetual Hope Rest Home, and it's in the shadow of Turner Field. Well, I guess it's now called Georgia State University Field. And this tree is so large that tree experts even argue about what it is. Some say it's a cherry bark oak, and some say it's a southern red oak. I'll be interested. I suspect that there's some of you in this room that know and love your trees. Be interested when you go to see it, what you think it is. But I've gone with what Eli Dickerson, the champion tree guy, says, and so I'm calling it a cherry bark oak. And again, it's the largest tree in all of the city, and that's the kind of thing that I got excited about sharing in Secret Atlanta, because in Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest, you can't go on a walk, hike in this location, but this tree is still worth folks knowing about. All righty, so here's what I'm going to do. I made myself a whole bunch of slides because I got so excited to share a lot of stories with you, and then I flipped through the slides right before I got online here, and I thought, man, I put a lot in this slideshow. So I may skip by some of them quickly, but I promise you, everything I'm sharing in here, just go pick up a copy of Secret Atlanta. There's a good shameless plug for you, and you can learn more. So if I skip over something or go pretty fast, but I figure y'all are here because you want to hear a lot of stories and have new things to go see, especially during these COVID times we live in. I'm hoping what you'll come away from is some ideas for adventures that you may not know that you wanted to do. So let's start. All right, so first, all right, this is a nature group, right? So I'm not surprised anybody by Davidson Arabian Mountain Nature Preserve. This is one of the gems of Atlanta, and it is a DeKalb County park, and it is just fabulously beautiful. It's one of the three primary monadnocks in Atlanta. A monadnock is a granite mountain, and this is the oldest of the three. The other two being Panola Mountain and also, of course, Stone Mountain. And so people hike to the top of Arabia Mountain, to pretty much the location of this picture, all the time. But did you know that there are 6, maybe even 8 other really, really cool trail loops around Davidson Arabia Nature Preserve? And so because we're talking about trees, I'm going to tip you off to a loop that I love doing. And it'll really get you off the beaten path so you're not in a big crowd of people. And it's also a lot easier parking. Over at the Evans Mill parking lot at the park, you can take a hike through the Cascade Trail and the Wilburn Farm Trail. And one of the reasons I wanted to share this with you was because, well, gosh, the top of Arabia is beautiful, isn't it? Okay, maybe you should go there too, but also take that Wilburn Farm loop, because one of my friends and coworkers, Robbie Astrov, who probably many of you know because he's kind of a Johnny Appleseed of Atlanta in a way. Robbie has started planting fruit trees in that area because he found at this old farmstead this awesome tree. Yes, that's me as a younger man, sticking my head through a hole in a tree. This is a pear tree that has a big giant hole through it, but it is still growing and still fruiting right there at that Wilburn Farm site at the Davidson Arabia Mountain Nature Preserve. And Robbie has started planting younger pear trees all around it. So when this one finally stops fruiting and decides that hole in the middle of it is too much for it, there'll still be fruit growing in that area. So if you've been to the top of Arabia, choose another trail next time and go exploring. All right, so the next story I'm gonna tell you is about these two men. This story I hopefully can tell you very quickly. This man, Robert Alston, was killed in a duel in the state capitol by this man, Captain Edward Cox. And their graves are next to each other. This is at the Decatur Cemetery, and this story is a kind of amazing historical story, which we can get into all these different layers of. But the basics are that, that one day, Edward Cox ran into a barber shop where Robert Alston was getting a little trim and said, "You need to pull your bill." Alston was a state representative at the time. "Pull your bill. It's going to ruin me." And Alston said, "No, I won't do it." And Cox said, "Well, then get your gun and meet me under the gold dome." Later that day, both men pulled their guns in the treasurer's office of all places, and Cox shot Alston dead. This is a story you can learn way more about, but the tip that you need to look into when you're learning about it is that there was something called convict leasing. That was more or less a way to re-enslave African-American folks in Atlanta. There were laws passed that entrapped primarily African-American men. Once they were in jail, they were then kind of sold to businesses that could use them as labor for free. And Alston was trying to push a bill that would end this practice. Mr. Cox was actually leasing convict labor. So this story, you see how many layers, like these guys are buried right next to each other. They killed each other in a duel in the Capitol. And there's this whole history of convict leasing that many people don't think about. But when you're at the Decatur Cemetery, what a great place for a hike. And there are 3 champion trees at the Decatur Cemetery. So the tree you see behind you, the large, not the small one in the foreground, but in the background, that large one that's an evergreen, that's an eastern red cedar, and it's the champion eastern red cedar. There's also, I believe, the champion, I think it's post oak, might be blackjack oak, and then also the champion Virginia pine, all at the Decatur Cemetery. So what's next? Well, let's go to the most quintessential tree of all of Atlanta. The peach tree, right? So this spot right here that I'm showing you pictures of is a site of a city park called Standing Peachtree Park. It's at the confluence of the Chattahoochee River and Peachtree Creek. And you guys know that like there's over 70 roads in Atlanta all named Peachtree of some sort. And the reason for that is because of this original settlement that was in the Atlanta area called Standing Peachtree. It then became a site of a fort called Fort Peachtree, and it's now the site of a city park that you can go visit. But the real question, though, is, was it a peach tree? Man, I have read so many different accounts of this from so many different historians, and there's pretty clearly 2 different stories. One, that there was either one massive peach tree growing on top of a mound near the village of Standing Peachtree, or there was like a grove of peach trees around the village, or this is a mistranslation. And actually, one of the most common trees in the Atlanta area, the loblolly pine, which would have been called the pitch tree, P-I-T-C-H tree, there was a large pitch tree standing at this location. And so perhaps Standing Peachtree is Standing Pitch Tree. So again, an interesting question about what our city's really named after, right? Should we just be having pine trees everywhere on our signs instead of peaches? Again, some of you maybe have read more than me and know a definitive answer, but I have yet to find one. But because I love stories, you know, I don't mind having 2 different stories because it gives me more to imagine. So we're talking about history. So I'm going to bring you to a place that that is one of the more, I think, sad current historical stories that we have going on. I'm sorry. I went on to the next picture. This is a replica of Fort Peachtree that is at this location. The public can't get to it right now, but I'm hoping that they're going to reopen it to the public. Okay, so now on to this next history story. It's this building right here. This is Gaines Hall. And Gaines Hall is the oldest building of African American historical significance in town. It is on Morris Brown campus, which used to be the Atlanta University. And it's actually the location where W.E.B. Du Bois was living as he wrote his famous and seminal book, Souls of Black Folk. So this building, a really important one. But as you see, it's behind chain link, vines growing up it, boarded up windows, and if you look high enough, you see the roof is even fallen in. The really sad story about this is that Morris Brown ended up selling the building to City of Atlanta, or it might have been taken by City of Atlanta in some proceedings. And while City of Atlanta owned it, the building burned. But then, through a loophole, there was a rule that said if it's not being used for educational purposes, it has to revert to ownership by Atlanta University, which of course is Clark Atlanta. So Clark Atlanta took ownership of the building, now a burned, crumbling building, and came to City of Atlanta and said, hey, you got to fix this. City of Atlanta said, well, officially, according to the rules, it was never ours. And Atlanta University, or Clark Atlanta, said, well, it wasn't ours either. And there wasn't enough insurance money to fix the building. So right now, this really, really important building is standing there slowly crumbling. And I only tell you this because, you know, keeping our history alive is in my mind, a really important thing. As important, dare I say it, in a Trees Atlanta event, is making sure our canopy our tree canopy stays healthy. Because what are we without our history and our trees? Well, we're lots of other things too, but those are two important ones. But right next to Gaines Hall is this beautiful building. Gosh, I love this one. This makes me think what Gaines Hall must have looked a little bit like in its heyday. This is Fountain Hall. This is right across the street, also in the Morris Brown campus. And I just share it with you because when I see Gaines Hall crumbling, and then I see Fountain Hall standing there, looking as beautiful as this building, it makes me want to do something. And right here, I just found a tree that I think might be a champion. It's not in this picture, but just adjacent to it is the largest southern catalpa tree I've seen in the whole city. I'm going to go get Eli Dickerson to go out and measure that tree, and then we'll see if it shows up on that champion tree list. All right, y'all, I'm rolling here. I'm rolling. Oh, shoot, man, we got a few more minutes here. So let me share with you a few more stories. You see how I'm trying to tie them back into trees here? This next one is kind of where I transition away and telling you a couple more historical stories, and then we'll get into some more of that. You remember how I told you it was the weird, wonderful, and obscure? So I think I've been doing the wonderful, maybe a little of the obscure, but we'll get into a little of the weird too. This picture is a historic picture of the Peyton Road barricade. In 1962, there was a doctor who decided to move into the Peyton Forest neighborhood. Well, the Peyton Forest neighborhood was an all-white segregated neighborhood, and the doctor moving in was African American. And the white neighbors, they got really, really upset. And they called up the mayor and their council people and said, you have to stop this. We want you to close all roads to the north. That meant the African American neighborhoods. To the north of Peyton Forest neighborhood. We want you to close all those roads so nobody will move into our neighborhood. And the mayor did it. He built a literal wall between the African American and the white neighborhood. And this became international news. Some headlines called it the Atlanta Berlin Wall. And after much protest, the Peyton Road barricade and the Harlan Road barricade, there were two of them, were taken down. And the story has been mostly forgotten. This is the place where it was now, right at Harlan and T Road. And you see it's just a pleasant tree-lined neighborhood. And there's not a historical marker anywhere to be found. And so one of the stories that we can lift up is a story of maybe some of the things our city didn't do right, in fact, did wrong. But we must remember it because as we see, um, things go in cycles, and we want to make sure that that kind of action uh, doesn't reappear. All right, let's transition. This is a place just outside the perimeter. Most of what I've been showing you is inside the perimeter stuff. This is one of the last historic covered bridges in the metro area. It's on Concord Road. And you see that 7-foot height steel barricade? There have been so many trucks that have run into the bridge that they had to put that up. So trucks will now run into that barrier instead. But the reason why I decided to include the Concord Road covered bridge in Secret Atlanta was because there's a ghost story there. So here's how it goes. Imagine you're that car, but driving into that single lane covered bridge. It's pretty long too, so it's dark in there. Drive in after dusk. Park in the middle of the bridge. Turn off your lights and roll down your window. Now take the Snickers bar you've been bringing with you and put it on the roof of your car. Roll up your window and you'll hear the skittering of little feet. And when you reach back up there, the candy bar is gone. Well, that's the ghost story, at least. First of all, do not stop after dark inside this bridge. Bad idea. But the story's been around for a while, and folks call the ghosts the waterheads. And there's a lot of history around this bridge, and some people think that it might have been kids who drowned in Nickajack Creek below it, or perhaps um, the son of John Ruff, who ran a mill nearby. But the reason I first found this covered bridge was because of this amazing park called Heritage Park, which is right adjacent to the bridge and to the Silver Comet Trail. And this is one of my favorite places to go hiking in the metro area because you get this, it's an out and back hike. It's about almost 4 miles, and you're right along the edge of Nickajack Creek, and there's even a small waterfall there. So if you're in the mood for a waterfall hike, but not in the mood to drive all the way up to North Georgia, this is one of the places to check out. Anybody recognize this place? What would you think if I told you there were 11,000 dead bodies inside? It's the Westview Abbey and Mausoleum. And it is, at least at the time it was built, it was the largest mausoleum, largest volume mausoleum in the whole country. And we think of Oakland Cemetery all the time when we think of Atlanta's favorite cemeteries, or we think of Southview, where John Lewis and where the King family was buried. But Westview is one people don't visit and think about nearly as much. But I highly recommend taking a walk around Westview Cemetery, not just because of this amazing mausoleum church thing. You can go inside it as well, but also because of the trees. There's at least 3, it might be 5 champion trees in Westview Cemetery. This one, not a champion, but it's just one of the ones I love. Just one of those beautiful old oak trees that wasn't shade grown, so it got to spread out as far as its branches wanted. So a trip to Westview, of course, you can see famous graves, a historic abbey and mausoleum, and walk around and see what trees you find. I've heard, though I haven't seen it, the largest ginkgo tree in the whole city is smack in the middle of Westview. And then let's wrap up this section of my talk with the urban food forest at Browns Mill. Now, I'm pretty sure Trees Atlanta is highly involved in this, and if you don't know about it, it is definitely a place to go. It is a city park, and it is also being planted with nut trees, berry trees, fruit trees, and also many different layers of fruiting and edible plants, plus a large community garden, apiary bees. And so if you haven't been to the urban food forest at Browns Mill, I didn't want to get through this talk without pointing you there, because I know you guys are nature and tree people. And I just saw somebody in the comments in the chat say that East Point is the home of Connolly Nature Preserve, which is the home of a champion white oak. Some people have called that oak the Hank Aaron oak. And yeah, it's a great place to go. Another tip is in the spring, underneath the Hank Aaron oak, there are some pink lady slippers growing. So take a look. All right, so that's a bunch of some of my favorite things. See, it's some history, it's some nature, but now I want to do some very, very, very just brief glimpses at some other, maybe more unusual Atlanta secrets. So the first thing is just a little south of Atlanta. Let's see. It's called Barbie Beach. And there's this couple that just on the side of the road decided to pour a bunch of sand into their front yard. And then they took all of these Barbie dolls, naked Barbie dolls, and they put them out in a little diorama in their front yard. And this thing has become so popular, they've kept it going for 8, maybe 10 years. And it is now a full-on roadside attraction. Now, they even made a little parking area for people to pull off and take a look at Barbie Beach. This is down near Sonoya, so just a little south of Atlanta. The next is in Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. I think this has got to be the most amazing piece of art ever put in an airport, and it is called the Concorde. For those of you maybe around my age, you might remember the supersonic jet, the Concorde. Well, this is the Concorde, and it is part of the Airport Art program, which is an amazing program. Every single gate in the E-gates has an amazing and really impressive installation of art. So if you ever get out of the city again, oh dear, if you ever have a chance to fly again and get there a little early or have a little time after your flight, go visit the E-gates and go check out some of that artwork. Now, I noticed somebody also talking about the Chattahoochee Brick Company, about the convict leasing. I'm glad to see. Y'all should check out the chat there, because that's some important information about convict leasing and some new information about the Chattahoochee Brick Company. This site that I have a picture up here, you see it kind of says zoo animals down yonder? Well, this is the site of an elephant graveyard. And it turns out that when Zoo Atlanta's large animals died, they began burying them on the edge of Key Road, right near what's now the old Atlanta Prison Farm, which is kind of near Constitution Lakes, the Starlight 6 Drive-In. And it became almost a shrine where people would go visit their favorite elephants. And I heard Willie B perhaps is even buried there as well. A historic picture of I believe this is Coco, one of the first elephants that Zoo Atlanta owned and cared for. This is in Sweet Auburn. Many of you probably recognize Madam C.J. Walker. There was just a show that came out called, I think it's called Self-Made, about Miss Walker. And this beauty shop, which there was a whole line of C.J. Walker beauty shops, got converted into a museum that's now called the Madam Museum. And it is a fabulous place to go, and you can still get a haircut there. The proprietor also owns huge numbers of records. So you can go just listen to music, learn the history of Madam C.J. Walker, but also a lot of the history of Sweet Auburn in this place. And it's free and open to the public. Donations, of course. And I suspect a lot of you have been to this place. This is at the Georgia State University's Decatur campus, Native Plant Botanical Garden, which was created by George Sanko. And he planted his personal collection of ferns. I've read that it's the largest collection of ferns planted anywhere in the United States. And if you haven't been there, y'all, go to the Native Plant Botanical Garden and definitely go check out the Ferns of the World Garden. I titled the chapter in Secret Atlanta, Jurassic Georgia, because whenever I walk through here, I just think I'm in Jurassic Park, without the dinosaurs, of course. This is, you might have seen this as you're driving down Edgewood. This is in a little tiny city park called Delta Park. And this is a single cell jail from back when Inman Park was the first planned suburb of Atlanta. They didn't have a police station, so they built this little lockbox. And then if somebody committed a petty crime or got drunk, they would toss them in here, lock them in, until the paddy wagon could could ride out from Atlanta and bring them back into the Atlanta jail. And this thing is still standing. People drive by it all the time and wonder, is that just a utility box or something? But next time you're near it, go by it, step inside, like my wife is right there, and then close the door. See how long you would want to be locked up inside there. And then this place right here is another I just think it's a really weird, cool thing. Nestled between a Napa Auto Parts and a Walmart in a parking lot is a cemetery. This is the Crawley Mausoleum, and it is the site of a family cemetery who used to own the land before it was turned into a shopping center. And part of the rules of selling the land is they said you have to keep our cemetery intact. And so these 20-foot stone walls were built, a staircase to the top. And though it's locked, you can't get to the top of it. People have sometimes call it the grave of the unknown shopper because, you know, it's in a shopping center parking lot. And it's at the Walmart right there at Memorial Drive and Columbia, just south of Decatur. And the graves are still there right on top of it. The family was nice enough to let me go up to the top when I was writing the book, but you can do a search on Google Earth and you can actually see the top of it from there. All right, and finally, this is perfect wrap-up time. Finally, this was the thing that was not going to go in my book, and I found out about it like a week before my due date. And I thought, this is so cool and so unusual that I've got to include it. This is called, the Mechanical Riverfront Kingdom, or Druid Hill. And it is a giant collection of sculptures in one man's front yard. And he has been doing metal sculptures for years and years and years. This is what his backyard looks like. And then there's some that are like 30 feet tall. It's an amazing place. And if you drive down North Druid Hills Road, kind of between Spring Creek Road and Claremont, you will find the site of Druid Hill, or the Clark Ashton's Mechanical Riverfront Kingdom. You can just pull up in his driveway. He loves having visitors, and just go walk around his yard. Even if he's not home, he's cool with it. He told me he's cool with it. So the reason I found this was because, as Dana told you, I am now the park ranger at Mason Mill Park, which is just right around the corner from that location. And so I guess I kind of wanted to wrap up by saying this all came full circle for me. I originally walked to Atlanta on the Appalachian Trail. I wrote a hiking guidebook all about not the Appalachian Trail, but the close-in trails, the trails that are just around the corner from our houses. And now, lo and behold, you can see me there in the middle. There's a better picture of me. I get to now be the DeKalb County Park Ranger, working in an urban green space right around the corner from my house. And so I invite you, not now because during COVID we've suspended all programs, but I invite you once I guess the pandemic, who knows, y'all. Once we're able to lead public programs again, come hiking with me sometime, because it's now a public service I get to offer as a DeKalb County employee, to come show you around Mason Mill Park. And right now, mostly what I'm doing is I'm making videos as Ranger Jonah. So if you want to keep track of me a little bit, one way you can do that is go to the DeKalb County YouTube channel called Ranger Jonah McDonald, and I've been making a lot of nature videos. So if you've slightly enjoyed hearing some of my stories, you can hear some more right here. But before I close, somebody asked a question. Carla said, how do we know we're not going to get shot if we pull into this man's property? Yes, I completely understand. That is a scary thing, and you have to do what's comfortable with you. I did not just pull into his driveway, but he told me, Jonah, you can publish in Secret Atlanta an invitation to everybody saying, I want anybody to come who wants to come. And the reason why I know that he wants people to come is because he is trying to convince the county, to get on board with him naming his site Druid Hill. He wants it to be on the National Geographic Board of Names or whatever. And so he wants as many people to come as possible. And also, he's been doing this art for 20, 30 years, and he wants to show it off. So, you know, I get the question though. That makes sense. Always be careful. Whenever I tell people I'm a hiking guidebook author, the one question I almost always get is, "Hey, dude, you're a tall man. I'm a rather small woman. I don't feel comfortable hiking alone in the woods. How do I know which one of these trails I feel safe going to?" And the way I kind of think about it is, you know your comfort level and what you feel safe in. And so always do be careful. Bring a dog with you. Walk with somebody else. Um, and I can't stop, y'all. I can't stop. I got to tell you, I just told you all these stories about my books. Go buy them. Well, you don't have to buy them if you don't want to. But if you'd like a signed copy from me, then secretatlanta.com is my website. And put in the code 3SHIP. I'm just, y'all, I'm just a guy selling books out of my office, right? So I'm not as cheap as Amazon. But if you want a signed copy, I'll discount it a little bit for y'all. And you can get either book on the website. And you know what? I always prefer doing these things in person because I get to see your faces. But I hope you've had an enjoyable time and have a little bit of a bucket list of secret things, hidden forests, or maybe champion trees that you want to go look up and go find. So, all right, let's take it up to do some questions. Dana, what do you think?
We do have some Q&A questions. So
Well,
one
I'm going to stop
question.
sharing my screen there.
Okay,
All right.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a question from Richard who wants to know, are there any good things to see near where the West Side Quarry project is being built?
Yeah. So the West Side, it's called West Side Reservoir Park, and it's soon to be the largest City of Atlanta park, larger than Piedmont Park. And the thing that you absolutely have to go to is the Proctor Creek Greenway. Many of you probably know about WAWA, or West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. They have been doing so much to make sure that watershed, which got highly polluted. I mean, this is a creek that's one of the main creeks in Atlanta. I mean, it's like Peachtree Creek, Nancy Creek, Proctor Creek, and people used to do full immersion baptisms in Proctor Creek, but it got so polluted that you didn't want to step in that creek. But the water quality has come back, and now people are starting to be drawn back to it by this amazing greenway called the Proctor Creek Greenway, which will connect to the West Side Reservoir Park. And you know, it's not open yet, but you know, there's ways people can get into it, if you know what I mean. It's an amazing spot, and definitely bicycle it or walk it. It's actually, I'm taking my family there like every other weekend. I love it so much.
So, do you have a running list of new and wonderful weird places to visit?
Oh God, that's a good question. I do have a bit of a list, but I don't have it in front of me. Like, that's the thing, is I have like a little Google Doc that I keep them on. Let me think, because you know, I'm always being stumped. That's the thing, is like, people think when you're like supposedly the expert at one of these things, that you got to know everything. But every single talk I do, somebody teaches me something new, and that's the best part of it, is I get to do this book talk that then people stump me with something, and I get to say, cool, I get to go to a new place. So what's the most recent thing that somebody just tipped me off to? Oh man. Y'all, I'm totally drawing a blank. It's going to come to me, and I'll come back to that. All right, Dana. And yeah, go ahead.
Someone asked if you knew anything about Lake Charlotte, the Lake Charlotte Preserve.
So I've walked it before. Again, that's another place that it's not officially open, but there are ways people can get in. You know, like don't do it. Don't do it. I'm not telling you to do it. Lake Charlotte Preserve is pretty much the best. There's two articles that I've read about it recently. One, a story by Molly Samuel on WABE, and another by, I don't remember who the reporter was, but I think it was on Supporter Report. And they give a lot of great information about it. So I don't need to repeat all that, but look those articles up. But as I walked it, the thing that's super cool is I keep on mentioning Eli's name, right? The champion tree guy. Well, he walked it. He found a shagbark hickory there. And so he's super nerdy about that kind of thing. And I'm guessing that people on this call are as well. And so there's not that many shagbark hickories, particularly mature ones in the city. So Eli was pretty excited, but he didn't tell me where it was. You know how tree people sometimes hide the special trees from everybody else?
I think that's all the questions that we have. If you guys have anything else in the chat, feel free to go ahead and put it now, going once, going twice. Or you can also email Jonah directly if you have any questions that come up that you couldn't think of now. But thank you so much, Jonah. This has been a wonderful talk. It's been very informative and enjoyable.
Well, thanks, Dana. It's again, when you love talking about something, one, you talk a lot, and then two, it's an easy thing to do because I like sharing these stories. So thanks for having me, and thanks for all you guys at Trees, all you Trees Atlanta groupies, because I'm one too.
Thank you so much. And just so everyone knows, we do have this recording. We'll be sending it out to everyone at the end of this presentation. Thank you so much. Please give us some feedback on this presentation, and we hope you guys have a wonderful evening.